Hi, everybody. This is Georgianne Hughes, and this is The Bite Show. And this is also part 2 with Paul Collins on Unholy Matrimony, the tie between the cult of intelligence and the cult of oligarchy. And it is a cult. Oh, boy. This is absolutely fascinating, Paul. And you're right in what you're saying. And the aim of all, of a lot of this, it's to get the average doofus out there in America land to hate their government.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is that when the cult of oligarchy became involved in government, you got this tricky situation now where you don't know where government starts and where private interest starts.
Right. And don't forget, we need to pick up on the other murders that took place.
Oh yeah. Well, I definitely will. But just to elaborate upon what you were just saying.
Right.
I know individuals that work in intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, and we do talk and everything, and none of them can I say ever gave me a smoking gun, so to speak.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not some tremendous major revelation. But the funny thing is that if you know how to say the right things and ask the right questions, you'll be surprised at what drops out of the tree, what you shake out.
Mm-hmm.
One individual that I know that works in intelligence, I was speaking to one day, and I basically complained about how private interests are now becoming involved in government, and we have outsourcing of federal jobs to private companies, and a lot of it's being privatized. And the example I brought up was I brought up the war on drugs. The whole thing is being handed over to these private mercenary corporations, these mercenary outfits,
right.
DynCorp, Global Security. The list goes on and on of companies.
Right.
And this individual that I know who works in intelligence told me, he said, it's a lot worse than that.
Oh, yeah.
He said there are intelligence positions that are now being privatized, and we have private companies, private contractors getting involved in intelligence work. Now, is that or is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, of course it is.
It very much is. And it's bad enough when you have government employees that lack decency. It gets even worse when you bring in private individuals.
Well, Paul, look at Wackenhut.
Yeah.
You start talking too much about Wackenhut, and something strange could happen to you.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the individuals that was looking into Wackenhut was Danny. Well, he wasn't looking into Wackenhut, but it came up in his investigation, was Danny Casolaro, and he was looking in.
Yes.
He had this hypothesis called the octopus, and it was looking into the theft of Promise software.
Yeah.
And Wackenhut came up during his investigation because of its ties to the Cabazon Indian Reservation.
Well, now too, Promise Software has a tie-in with Bill and Hillary Clinton.
Oh yeah. It goes all over the map.
Mm-hmm.
And but I thought I would point that out because that's basically what's happening. It's the United States government, which is supposed to represent the people and supposed to be there for the people's best interest, is now, through privatization and through outsourcing, being prostituted to private forces that we can call the cult of oligarchy. And intelligence falls right into this category of intelligence is being privatized. And so, I mean, it's a very, very dangerous path that we're on, because there's some very immoral people, almost more so than outside of government, and they're almost more immoral than the people that are inside of government.
Yeah, and you know, when you stop and think about the Patriot Act and the kind of laws that they're passing, and this whole apparatus, it just portends to a whole lot of wickedness and evil, and you know, my group is laying down the foundation and giving your group the tools to do what, you know, it's very complex. I mean, the way I look at it, it's demonically driven. Homeland Security has nothing to do with the security of this country. Just nothing.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. But when you just said that it was demonically driven, actually you open up a whole new can of worms with that.
Good, let's go there.
Well, there's an individual named Joseph Trento, and he wrote another book that people should read. You know, while I'm busy giving out this list of recommended reading during this program, called The Secret History of the CIA. And in that book, he gives out an exchange that happened between him and James Jesus Angleton. He had a rare opportunity to interview Angleton at the end of his life. Angleton was dying of cancer. And nearing the end of his life, he was marginalized as a crankpot, as kind of a crackpot, a crank, a madman. And it was very interesting, because this conversation that he has with Angleton slides very quickly from the political into the metaphysical. I mean, very quickly. I mean, first he talks about first Angleton talks about what he had to do to get his job of counterintelligence. He talks about people like the Dulles brothers, and he talks about the Nazis and all of that skullduggery. But then, nearing the end of his discussion, he all of a sudden this discussion becomes very quickly a metaphysical discussion, because he says, you know, that you look at, he says that Alan Dulles, Richard Helms, Carmel Alfie, and Frank Wisner were the Grand Masters of U.S. intelligence. Well, Grand Masters is a term that you find in Freemasonry.
Right.
And then he said something, and here, I have the quote right here. I'm just going to read the quote word for word, because I don't want to lose the meaning at all. Okay. He said, quote, "If you were in a room with them," and them, by them, he's referring to Dulles and Helms and Opie and Wisner, "you were in a room full of people you had to believe would deservedly end up in hell."
Yeah, sure.
Angleton slowly sipped his tea and then said, "I guess I will see them there soon." Unquote. That's a whole quote. So this man understood. Finally, nearing the end of his life, and he could be candid and very open, he understood full good and well that the activities that they were involved in had a spiritual consequence, and that what his work in intelligence and what the founding fathers of intelligence had also essentially done was sold their souls.
Yes.
So, I mean, when you say that this thing is demonically driven and all, the players in this game seem to have an understanding of that themselves.
Well, Scripture, Ephesians, tells us, our battle is not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers in high places.
That's correct.
Right.
And when you read that and you begin to over time apply that to your life, if you're not a lukewarm Christian or a nominal Christian,
right,
or or somebody that became a Christian to escape hell, and you probably do have a love for the Lord, but you just don't know, you don't know how to learn, and you have no real guide.
Yeah, and the ministers are certain, the 501c3s, they're not teaching anybody anything.
No, Yeah, and your reliance is totally on them.
Yeah.
But if you're not one of those individuals and you know how to apply that scripture to every aspect of your life, over time, applying it, what you come to learn as you apply it is that everything in the natural has its corollary in the spiritual.
Amen. That's right.
And Angleton said, look, fundamentally, this is what he said, fundamentally the founding fathers of U.S. intelligence were liars. The better you lied and the more you betrayed, the more likely you would be promoted. These people attracted and promoted each other. Outside of their duplicity, the only thing they had in common was a desire for absolute power.
Mm-hmm.
I did things that, I'm quoting him directly, I did things that, in looking back on my life, I regret, but I was part of it and I loved being in it. And all. And then earlier he said, the CIA got tens of thousands of brave people killed. We played with lives as if we owned them. We gave false hope. So all of those actions, yeah, they had political ramifications. And I talk about and I speak about the political ramifications because that's what I know best. My minor was in, I have a bachelor's degree, and my minor of my bachelor's degree is in political science. Mm-hmm. So it just makes sense to talk about the political ramifications and all. But you have to be a complete idiot to not see that as well as there being political ramifications, there are spiritual ramifications as well.
That's right.
And so, I mean, I'm no theologian. You don't have to be, but you're correct when you say that this whole thing is demonically driven, and that's no difference when we come to the case of the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, that may have all seemed tangential and long way around the barn, but I thought that it was all relevant to say.
Yes, it is relevant.
Uh-huh. Before we get into the case of other individuals who came up against the cult of intelligence and got in trouble for it.
Well, this is why they want everything. They want all this spy stuff, the electronics and satellite, spy on everybody, their phone, their mail, everything is digitized. Put a chip in everybody. It's anyone that would think that is not demonically driven. They're cuckoo.
Yeah.
They're just cuckoo birds. And it is as if each administration lays down the tools that's going to be used by the next administration, the laws, and they get everything in place.
Yeah, well, you're it's interesting that you say that because one researcher, I can't think of his name, but he's written for the left-leaning truthout.org, which actually has some occasionally good articles. What he found was the legislation, the Patriot Act legislation, actually included pieces that of a prior piece of legislation that Bill Clinton tried to get passed after the OKC bombing. And so, I mean, what they weren't able to get with the OKC bombing, they were able to get with September 11th and all. So I mean, it matched it matched the pieces of the different. It matched the legislation that they wanted after OKC almost perfectly, as far as this researcher was able to show. So yeah, I mean, like, you got this generational thing where one generation of power elites and turncoats in the government will lay down the tools for the next, and they'll pick up the baton and run.
Right.
You know. But another individual that was basically his death was meant to reinforce the Daley Plaza knockout lesson was former DCI William Colby.
Yeah.
Now, Colby was at his vacation home in Maryland, and then on April 27th of 1996, he disappeared. And the thing is that he had a neighbor that would come over and periodically check on him, and he came over and he found that his radio was still on, his computer was still on. When investigators came to his home, they saw that the dinner dishes were on the table, and his meal was being prepared. His clamshells were in the kitchen sink. And you know, this man was basically getting ready to eat, and he just inexplicably disappears. 10 days later, he finally shows back up. He was dead.
Yeah.
He was found in the Wicomico River, washed up on the sandbar. Now, they ruled his death an accident.
Yeah, and boy, what a crock that was.
Yeah, well, okay, the man gets into a boat and decides to go canoeing in bad weather and all. The man hated boats. He was an outdoors man, but he didn't like boats. So my question is why does he set the table for dinner and have his dinner being almost prepared in the sink, and then inexplicably gets the urge to do something that he doesn't like to do in bad weather, and leaves his house and goes out and gets in a boat? This is erratic behavior for a man that was so structured and watched what he said. If you ever read the book by John DeCamp, The Franklin Cover-Up?
No, I haven't.
Well, if you ever read it, Bill Colby talked to John DeCamp in it, and Bill Colby and John DeCamp were very good friends, and DeCamp was basically under Colby in the CIA, and DeCamp considered Colby his mentor, and the man was very careful about what he did, and he had a very structured life, very organized, and he didn't make rash decisions of this nature that we are being expected to accept. And so it's also interesting that John DeCamp does not believe that this was an accident, and he doesn't believe that it was a suicide either. He doesn't believe that. And there was a rumor going around in some circles, in Washington circles and in political circles, that this was a suicide. And it's interesting and John DeCamp points out in his book, The Franklin Cover-Up, he's like, look, let's address this right now. He's like, shortly before, his death, I saw the man, and he was in great spirits, and he was prepared to do all these projects and to tackle a bunch of new projects. Even at the age of I believe that he was about 76 when he passed. He was still had all these things that he wanted to do and that he was going to do. And the funny thing is, Georgianne, is that right around the time that this man ends up dead, he had the intentions of writing a book.
Yeah.
And this seems to happen a lot when somebody that came out of CIA gets the idea of writing a book. You either end up dead or you end up like Victor Marchetti in his book, CIA and the Cult of Intelligence.
Yeah.
That book is a very good book, and everybody should read that. But if you open it up, they made sure to clearly show where there was deletions made by the agency. And there are huge, just large sections of the manuscript that were deleted to keep people from knowing everything that Marchetti had written and everything. So, you either end up dead or your work ends up being just torn apart. And in Colby's case, it was that somebody got to him, and you couldn't convince me otherwise. I just do not.
Well, if you look in the spirit, you can see it.
Yeah.
You can see exactly, and there's going to come a time when there will be no more secrets.
Yeah.
And all these people that have gone around murdering people to keep them quiet and whatever, it's all going to be known.
Oh, yeah.
Their name, everything. It's all coming out.
Oh, yeah. Especially when there's no repentance for it.
Right.
And all. Now, I get the idea that Bill Colby, he had done some things that were wrong. He was part of the Phoenix assassination program.
Yeah.
And I believe that was wrong. I believe that was a very immoral thing. And he had come up with several ways of rationalizing that in his own mind so that he didn't feel so bad about it. He thought, well, to win this war, we have to get at key figures, and we have to get at the leadership. And the truth is that they were killing lots of people on bad intelligence, and they ended up being people that weren't even remotely involved with the enemy. Yeah. But you also see with Colby a man that was conflicted and was starting to turn against the prevailing tide, so to speak. And if you look back during the church committee, Richard Helms was the man who kept the secrets, and Bill Colby was the guy that was telling them all, speaking out. Because he said, I love the Central Intelligence Agency, and I want to see it. I don't want to see it destroyed, which is what will happen if this corruption continues, because it's becoming systemic.
Right.
And so he was probably the most forthcoming DCI to appear before the committee. And DeCamp does not believe for one moment that the man suicided himself or was killed accidentally. That was an accident and all. And it's really interesting that he was getting prepped up to write this book around the time that this all came down. One more case that I'd like to share of somebody that went up against the Central Intelligence Agency. and basically found that he was dealing with an enforcement arm of the elite. The Iraqi prime minister back in 1958, this man was not a good guy. Abd el-Karim Qasim, he overthrew the Iraqi monarchy, and it was just a bloodbath when he did that. And when he came to power, Iraq was involved in. When he came to power in Iraq, he was involved. The country of Iraq, rather, was involved in what was called the Baghdad Pact. And the Baghdad Pact was anti-Soviet. And the whole thing was about keeping the Soviets out of the region. And the Baghdad Pact included Britain, it included Iran, Pakistan, Turkey. And Qasim had a very, very nasty criminal regime with a lot of blood on its hands. And the United States really didn't care until Qasim decided in '59 that he was going to pull Iraq out of the Baghdad Pact. Now, the problem is that this would have destroyed the dialectic that the power elite had over there. And you see, they were trying to keep a dialectical balance in the world between the two opposing camps of East versus West. And that dialectical camp in the Middle Eastern region would have been totally upset by Iraq pulling out. So so the CIA authorized a 6-man hit squad to kill the Iraqi prime minister. And this happened in 1959. And I'll bet you would never guess who was part of this hit squad. It was Saddam Hussein.
Oh boy. Most
people think that our intelligence agencies didn't get involved with Saddam Hussein until around September of 1980, when the Iran-Iraq War occurred. But this is not true. He was part of this assassination team.
Well, and when people are connected in that way, over and over we've seen this. The government will go in with troops and they'll snatch the person. Look at what they did down in Panama.
Yeah,
because
Noriega.
The person knows too much. And they don't want them squawking about anything that might compromise, who all is involved in a lot of other things.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, with Noriega, he was probably going to squawk on bank accounts that had drug money on behalf of the Bush family.
Yeah, well, and he probably, from what I understand, Paul, he has very little brain left after what they've done to him.
I wouldn't doubt it. Well, look at what happened to Milosevic. I don't believe that man's death was an accident.
Oh, of course it wasn't.
And
they couldn't bring that to a full trial and allow witnesses to be called. I mean, that is like pulling on the string of a sweater.
Well, what? Yeah. Well, Milosevic, being no great guy himself, was going to spill the beans on a lot of activities that had gone on there in that region. I mean, we had in the general vicinity, we have the United States collaborating with the KLA. We'd have the KLA getting training from Al-Qaeda forces, with the United States watching on. And we had Milosevic, what little he did get to say, saying that there was forces within the United States government that were involved in 9/11. And isn't that fishy? because, he probably was privy to the fact that KLA was involved with Al-Qaeda and that the United States government knew about this. And, but, anyways, that assassination attempt that Saddam was part of, that happened on October 7th of 1959, and it was complete failure. And Saddam got wounded. His calf got grazed by another assassin, one of his own assassins. And he had to escape to Tikrit. And that escape was orchestrated by the Central Intelligence Agency and the Egyptian Intelligence Organization. And so, I mean, they had their guiding hand on Saddam all the way back in 1959. And, I mean, like, it wasn't until he became he became a problem, and we needed, and Bush 1 needed a pretext for certain things, namely his promotion of the concept of a new world order. He used that term more than any other president and any other political figure, probably, and all. So so we have this individual who we have another example of somebody that came up against the CIA and paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And everything.
But like Milosevic, they could not let that thing go to a full conclusion in a trial. I mean, it just would implicate too many people. Too much would come out.
Yeah.
And so, oh gee, he committed suicide, or he was just so sick, or, I mean, they killed him, he's dead.
Well, what they were giving him, he said, he complained about it, saying that it was going to make him sick and it was going to mess with his blood pressure.
Right.
And everything. So, it would have basically led to a lot of his mouth got shut up, and a lot of things didn't get out as a result. And that's basically what my article is about in a nutshell. And again, the only way that we're going to cut this tie between our intelligence community and the power elite is one of the ways is that we're going to have to just scrap the Central Intelligence Agency and start over again. And we have the right to a legitimate right to an intelligence collecting agency. The problem is as I said before, John Foster and Alan Dulles both supervised the writing of the Act, the 1947 National Security Act. And in that Act, there is a nice little obscure passage that basically has been used and interpreted and construed to give the Central Intelligence Agency the right to conduct covert operations. And when it can conduct covert operations, that basically makes it the power elite's policeman.
That's right.
And so what we need is a new collection agency, and this agency should not have covert operations as one of its. It shouldn't be allowed to carry them out. The covert operations should be carried out, in my estimation, strictly by the branches of the military, who the United States Congress has more oversight over. And there's going to hopefully be less conflict of interest there.
Yeah.
And these are the things that have to happen, start moving things forward, and to get us from this backward kind of motion that we have going on. And they certainly can't make everybody disappear. So it's important to just keep on speaking out about this, and hopefully that will bring about some positive change for the better.
Well, let's hope so. Let's pray so. You know, Paul, it really distresses me because I listened to and watched, over time, so many people out there, and they're bright.
Mm-hmm.
They figure some stuff out, but they just fall short of understanding that the whole schema behind it is to create distrust, suspicion, and hatred of our own government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's and admittedly, there's reasons to feel that way, but I don't think we want to dump our country into the laps of the Europeans.
No. No. Well, there is reason to be suspicious, but you got to learn how to direct that suspicion.
Yes.
Now, I think that if you want the perfect examples of how to direct that suspicion, you should look to authors such as Colonel Fletcher L. Prouty. He was the liaison between the Pentagon and the CIA for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And he was portrayed by Donald Sutherland in the movie JFK by Oliver Stone, which was really a ridiculous movie. That did a very poor job, in my estimation, of capturing the assassination, to be quite honest with you. But nonetheless, L. Fletcher Prouty did meet and did, in fact, know Jim Garrison, just not in the way that it was portrayed in the movie, not in this very cloak and dagger-esque kind of way. Yeah. That was just Stone's flair for the dramatic, or lack thereof, just the belief that he does. The man has nothing more than a bunch of self-important movies to his name, in my estimation. But Fletcher L. Prouty said that what we're essentially dealing with is a secret team.
Yeah.
And this secret team is spread out individuals that are in strategic areas in the government that can pull strings and make things happen. Mm-hmm. And and they're individuals inside the government and outside the government that have security clearance.
Oh, sure.
And that's what we're dealing with. And now people might say, well, when they listen to this, they might say, well, if it's a secret team and it's only specific people strategically placed in strategic positions, why are you saying scrap the Central Intelligence Agency? Well, because not everybody at the Central Intelligence Agency is bad. Well, I understand that. The problem is that the things have metastasized so.
Oh, very well put. Yes.
Yeah, that now it has become systemic with CIA. For instance, during 9/11, prior to 9/11, there were so many put options put out on the airlines that were going to experience the hijackings. And a put option is basically a bet that a stock is going to go down in its value.
Right.
And most of those put options were put out through A.B. Brown, which is known as the A.B. Brown Deutsche Bank now. And A.B. Brown had at its head at one time and was still connected to A.B. Buzzy Krongard, who was the number 3 man at Central Intelligence Agency. And so it sounds like a bunch of agency guys said, we're going to make ourselves some money off of this advanced knowledge that we have and everything. I mean, there's just the corruption has become systemic, and when the bad guys begin to outnumber the good guys, and then you have guys that are on the fence that are starting to get compromised. It's just best to scrap it and start over. That's just the way it is. And if you scrap it and start over with the proper kind of safeguards in place, namely no covert ops for this particular group and all, then the likelihood that you're going to have individuals which constitute a secret team involved in this organization are going to be a lot less.
Yeah.
And I mean, because that's so I don't see any contradiction in what I'm saying, you know. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a secret team and another individual who basically explained the problem that we face was Malachi Martin.
Oh, yes.
And he described in his books, Keys of This Blood, a supergroup. And the supergroup was in the Vatican. But it's like what I said yesterday on A Closer Look with Michael Corbin. I was on his show yesterday for about 2 hours, an hour and a half. I can't recall how long. You know, even though Malachi Martin's supergroup concept he was applying it to the Vatican, the principle applies in secular government as well. You know, you don't need some big monolithic conspiracy that involves everybody and everything. What you need is you have key people in key positions, and they can cause the wheels to start to go in the direction that they want. You know, and we do see this with the Vatican, and we do see certain evil things happening, and as a result, you've got some bad researchers out there that latch onto these things and say that it's some monolithic conspiracy that involves the whole Catholic Church, which it doesn't. You know, it involves key individuals in strategic positions. No. So, I mean, that's what we're dealing with, a supergroup, a secret team, and you know, the ways that you cut the ties between these individuals in our government is that, I mean, we for one thing, I think that we need to scrap the CIA and start over again. And also what we need when it comes to the intelligence community as a whole and when it comes to government as a whole is just get back this, and I mean, I said this last time, and so I guess I'm beating a dead horse, but get back the internal security apparatus that we once had. You know, at least have something in terms of an internal security apparatus. You know, the problem is that whenever you talk about an internal security apparatus here in the United States, the American left screams McCarthyism.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's
they don't want to be found out that there's an awful lot of communists among them.
No, No, McCarthy was being used by the power elite.
Yeah.
His handler was Roy Cohn, and Roy Cohn was basically the power elite's man that was managing McCarthy.
Yeah.
And the whole thing was that McCarthy was supposed to divert people's attention away from the power elite and get them worried about domestic communism.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if he had not stopped working with Bobby Kennedy and had continued had continued to work with Bobby Kennedy instead of going off with Roy Cohn, McCarthy probably would have done a lot better. You know. So, but what happened was that McCarthy started to hit on a lot of were either connected to the power elite or were part of the power elite, namely William Bundy. William Bundy, when he gave money to the Alger Hiss Defense Fund and McCarthy wanted to go after him, that's when the gulag started for him, so to speak. And the power elite from that moment on began to appreciate the fact that an internal security apparatus could be used against them. So they started building up the American left, and the American left used this new term, McCarthyism, to decry any and all attempts at internal security. And were able to peel away America's internal security apparatus. And, and until we have an internal security apparatus, we're not going to break the connection that's between the cult of oligarchy and our intelligence community. And as long as there's a wedding between the two, the intelligence community will remain the cult of intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's where we stand, like it or not, And that's pretty much what my article is about in a nutshell.
Well, the way you lay things out, Paul, I mean, it's really brilliant. You have a very good grasp, excellent grasp, on how it works. And I just hope that people out there will pay attention, because they're being tooled, they're being used, you know what I'm saying. The average person, they watch the TV news, and they think, well, wow, that's it. No, far from it. The population is being used against itself.
That's correct. Well, it's what you said, and this may go off a little bit off of topic, what we're talking about, but what you're saying, the people watch the media and take it at face value and think that that's all there is to say about the issue.
Yeah.
You take, for instance, right now, Mark Foley. It's possible that he's just some lone pervert seeking sexual gratification.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that he is merely an extension of this long-running problem of pedophile networks within Washington circles. And if you read the Lincoln Cover-Up by John DeCamp, who is not some conspiracy kook, he was a representative for Nebraska, and he was a Vietnam War hero. You'll see that these pedophile networks are not some rumor or some kind of urban legend concocted by housewives with too much time on their hands.
Yeah, but you see, a lot of the mainline people out there that go to church, they're stupid pastors, won't educate them on this topic.
No.
We don't talk about things like that. Nice people don't talk about stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so it goes on right under their nose, but they don't see it.
That's true. But, I mean, you have to look at this Foley situation,
right.
This situation with Mark Foley, and understand that there's a reason that Hastert and other members of the GOP were probably sitting on this thing. And
exactly.
It's because in all likelihood, in my estimation, probably goes back to the fact that we have these different pedophile rings amongst the power elite and amongst Washington circles.
Deeply entrenched.
Yeah. And if you shake that tree, you're going to find something else. You're going to find organized Satanism amongst the power elite and amongst Washington circles.
That's right.
Because whenever you're dealing with pedophilia, you're not just dealing with somebody seeking sexual gratification.
That's right.
See, the Rama Kumara Swami pointed it out perfectly when he was still alive in his writings. The pedophilia is basically the destruction of innocence.
Sure.
You being a Christian can understand this. Who is the personification of innocence?
Children.
Well, children are innocent, but who is the personification of innocence? Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ, yes.
So, by committing pedophilia, you are mimicking the fallen angel's rebellion against God.
Exactly.
So, so we basically have, so when you shake this tree, you're going to find pedophilia, and if you shake it further, you're going to find behind the pedophilia, you're going to find Satanism or Luciferianism, some form of devil worship.
Right.
And everything. And if you think you're going to hear that on Fox or CNN, if you think that you're going to get that from Anderson Cooper or from Neil Cavuto or from any of these guys, and all, just keep dreaming.
Oh, they vomit. They couldn't say the words.
No. Mm-mm.
You know, they can't even say Jesus Christ without grimacing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. Oh, gee. Oh. Oh, my Paul. You know, this country's in a lot of trouble, and I just hope and pray that people will listen to these audio files and begin to see how this works and what is really being done and who's doing it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like you mentioned Chavez, Soros. It's real. It doesn't take a big stretch of imagination to think that maybe there's groups that would be very interested in getting Chavez to be absolutely outrageous and say outrageous things that people in this country that have a low IQ would agree with.
Oh yeah.
You hear what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it just sickens me when I hear people agree. You know, they think Chavez is good and Chavez is, oh, gee.
Well, even now, Alex Jones has come out and kind of been supportive of Chavez. And you got Webster Tarpley, and for the life of me, I don't know why this man is doing this, because Tarpley has had some good work in the past.
Yes.
Is now trying to get Chavez to set up a 9/11 Truth Commission, a 9/11 Truth meeting in Venezuela. And Chavez is very receptive to the idea.
Well, of course.
And it's just ridiculous. I mean, like, it's obviously not about the truth. It's about inflaming people, you know, enraging people and getting them to go off on a radical trajectory against against the United States, and to basically think that it was the legitimate constitutional government of the United States that was responsible for this, for the 9/11 attacks. And of course it follows, if they were responsible for the 9/11 attacks, then it's time to ditch the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And the day that happens, and all, you can kiss it all goodbye.
Yeah.
And everything. And all. But if you'd be so kind, I'd like to just share some of this information with people if they want to go and read about other articles, not just Unholy Matrimony, but other articles that we have up. We have almost I'd say the most comprehensive file of our articles is at www.conspiracyarchive.com.
You know, maybe he will plug my show.
Yeah, well,
he should, because we've certainly been very kind to this fellow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly think that you should definitely look into probably having Terry on at some particular point in time. He's putting together what is probably going to be the most comprehensive work over the Illuminist ever written, called The Perfectables. And he's a really good researcher, and he has a comprehensive file of our work up there. And Philip and I are also writing for the ACL report, which is the newsletter of the radio talk show host of Michael Corbin, called A Closer Look. And
well, Michael ought to plug us too, because every time you come on, you talk about him.
Oh yeah.
So I think it would only be fair if Michael would direct people to your audio files on the Bite Show.
Well, Michael's doing great work and everything, and he's made some people angry here as of late because of his truth-telling style, but that's worth it, and that's the price you pay. And everything. And people can basically subscribe to the ACO report at www.4acloserlook.com. And they'll be able to find at these different, through these different sources, our work and the work of a lot of other good writers, Toby Westerman, Bill Kennedy, the individual that wrote the excellent book Lucifer's Lodge. And all I can say is just get into them and start digging into this stuff and reading, reading good sources, and you're going to start to see what makes things in the world of politics move and how the world works and everything. And once you have a proper map, you won't be so confused anymore.
That's very well said, because there is a lot of confusion out there, and there are obviously, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of people that are very interested in keeping the confusion.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are muddying the waters, so to speak, with a lot of disinformation that gets you chasing your own tail. And when you find a reliable source, it's important to latch onto that source and to stick with it, because as things become even more confusing as time goes on.
Oh boy, and they're fixing to get even more so very soon.
Oh yes, yes. Shortly, in a short period of time, I guess, from what I see on the news, we can expect, things to only get more disjointed.
I know. Wow. Well, we will be back with you soon, I hope, on some other topics that we need to cover. And God bless you, Paul, for what you're doing.
Thanks, Georgianne.
And God bless all our listeners out there, too, because we need to pray for good people to come forward and expose these things and to write about them and to get that information out there and be supportive of like Paul and his brother Philip Collins. Excellent writers, excellent observations that they make on these issues, and wow. Anyway, we've come to the end tonight here, and I'm very, very grateful to have Paul Collins on, and we will be back, as I said. So God bless you all out there in listening land, and take care. Good night, everybody.